Don't care. Still voting for Cenk, of course, obviously. All right, let's get started. U.S. has approved the plan to strike Iranian targets in Syria and Iraq, officials say. Let's take a look.
And Secretary concluding a very lengthy news conference talking about it being a dangerous moment in the Middle East. He said it had been difficult days for the Department of Defense since Sunday's attack, which killed 3 service personnel in Jordan. Then there was that lengthy apology about that controversy about his hospital visit, being treated for prostate cancer, which of course the president was not told about. He apologized to the American president, to his team and the public. He gave a long explanation, but he said it was an explanation, not an excuse. We're listening to all of that. Nick Beek is in Jerusalem for us. Nick, let's return to the many comments he made on the potential US retaliatory action. Obviously minimal details, but what we've learnt is that the attacks over a number of days, there'll be a series of attacks, they'll be inside Iraq and Syria, and crucially not inside Iranian territory itself.
Yeah, Matthew, I thought it was really interesting listening to the US's top defense official there, outlining how the White House sees Iran as stirring things up in the Middle East. We've already heard from one of his colleagues how this part of the world...
It's kind of funny because like this kind of back and forth has happened, not to the same severity, not to the same intensity for a while. Like, the only reason why the media is paying more attention to it is because right now, tensions are really high due to Israel's ethnic cleansing campaign in Gaza. But Iranian-backed proxies and militia groups that have been operating in the region almost in perpetuity. They've certainly been operating in Syria. They've certainly been operating in Iraq, especially with a lot more prominence and influence in Iraq as well. And this is this is not new. The fact that there's like a back and forth scuffles occurring with like minor, I would say oftentimes minor and maybe sometimes some serious casualties, often on the side of the Iranian backed proxies, but it's a real tit for tat. Now, of course, the situation is a little bit different because tensions have been elevated greatly. America's involvement in the region has escalated. Israel's actions are causing everyone to pay more attention to what's going on, right? And by the way, those yes, as this chatter correctly pointed out, a lot of those Iranian-backed militias did a phenomenal job fighting against ISIS. Okay, so that's also something to remember. Like the major villains of like Shia militia forces or whoever the fuck Iran is like. Iran is oftentimes offering like logistical and structural support to are going to be the Salafists. Okay, it's going to be like the Al Nusra Front or Al Qaeda or other like Wahhabi and Salafist movements in the region. It's not like people that America also recognizes as like the bad guys. One famous example is obviously like in the aftermath of 9/11, Iran was sharing Iran was sharing Taliban targets with the United States of America in Afghanistan and Al Qaeda targets too, if I'm not mistaken. So like, it's not as though these guys are, what the fuck? It's not as though these guys are not collaborating at all and like are mortal enemies or anything. So in this circumstance, usually there is way more collaboration than you think, by the way. Trump did this as well. They'll tell ahead of time to the other country that they are going to be bombing certain positions, and then those positions will be emptied out. It will still be harmful to the operations, but it's usually more of a collaborative bombing campaign. It's weird, but that is usually how it works. So I think America probably, I don't know exactly, but I assume they like cut a deal. I assume they cut a deal with Iran maybe, and maybe Iran didn't want to cut the deal, but why would they want strikes in Iran? No. None of this is in Iran. This is not okay, one thing to consider here, okay? Iran is not as far as I understand, this bombing campaign is not going to target Iran. It's simply going to target Syria and Iraq. Okay? That's usually how this works. They don't just like strike at Iran directly. They strike at the proxies in Syria and they strike at the proxies in Iraq. The people that suffer are going to be the Syrian people, the Iraqi people, depending on where they're striking. But that's usually how this goes. However, that's not enough for the Republicans, as Ben Shapiro, Lindsey Graham, and many others are currently salivating at the prospect of striking Iran directly. That would be a major escalation, which would lead to major retaliation from the Iranian forces directly. The IRGC would most likely start operating with great severity and most likely damage infrastructure that America and the rest of the globe relies on, specifically on the energy side of things. They would most likely immediately start launching missiles that are not as easy to apprehend or defend against on like oil refineries and the like. The campaign will reportedly target Iranian individuals and facilities in Iraq and Syria, as well as proxy forces, says Elant News. I think the aim here is to potentially kill Iranian-backed Iraqi militias members as well as their facilities. The reason they're saying it will be across multiple weeks is because they could wait until the IRGC forces let their guard down and re-enter Iraq and Syria and hit them. Iran is not seizing Iran, not have militia groups. USA just causing problem in the Middle East. USA needs to get their head out of their ass and leave Arab region. Isn't this literally what happened before Trump won in 2016 when Obama bombed Syria? Well, Trump did a similar thing. I believe the positions that Trump bombed in Syria were also depopulated beforehand. It's more so about, in a lot of instances, these bombing campaigns are more collaborative than you would think. And it's about like crippling the infrastructure so that it's harder for them to push back and harder for them to actually attack next time around. And it's more of like an optical conversation. It's for optics. Like they want to show to the American public, like, you know, you don't fuck with America, right? Like Americans think like we bombed the shit out of them. We did a great job. And then, you know, they have something to show for it. It's a continuation of that same tit for tat.
Faces a danger it hasn't seen for some 50 years, and Lloyd Austin there was making clear that he believed Iran was responsible for this through funding and supporting various groups across this region. Chiefly, some of the groups that have been operating within Syria and Iraq. And of course, he said that it didn't really matter how much Iran knew about that specific attack at the weekend in which 3 American service personnel were killed. He said the fact that Iran are giving weapons and giving backing to these groups means that Iran is responsible, and that's why Iranian targets will be looked at in the coming hours and days at a time of America's choosing, he was saying. But yes, you're right, there will be no strikes on Iranian soil. I think that was always seen as highly unlikely. The White House saying they don't want a wider conflict, they don't want to exacerbate things, but they do have to send a message. And of course, that sending a message extends to a few different things in the Middle East at the moment, notably the Houthi rebels who have been firing from within Yemen out towards the Red Sea. They say they've been hitting ships which are linked to Israel, the US, the UK, and they've been doing this in solidarity with the people of Gaza. And they say they'll continue to hit shipping until the fighting stops and Israeli forces withdraw. Clearly, there's no sign of that happening at the moment. So there are concerns that with more military activity in the Middle East about
with that logic, he must agree that America is responsible for the idea of bombing Gaza, right? Yeah, but you don't understand. They're the good guys and not scary. Okay. Whereas, you know, Israel, good guys because they are allies and they are the American proxy, and therefore their genocide good. Okay. Their genocide good. Their war crime good. The other guys, on the other hand, and their proxies, whether it's defensive or offensive posturing, doesn't matter. What their goals don't matter. What their goals are don't matter. Those are the bad guys. Okay? When you are the biggest power player on the fucking planet, it doesn't matter. Okay? You're the playground bully. You're the playground bully. You go in with a gun, in most instances and scare the shit out of everybody, sometimes use the gun. And if anybody turns around and retaliates and say, hey man, fuck you, not even like slaps you or anything, just says fuck you, you go, oh, sorry, I have to shoot you in the face point blank. How dare you? How dare you say fuck you to me? It is the worst thing you've ever done in your entire life. Here it is. It's the last thing you will ever do. Spin cycle full on now. Scoop, State Department reviewing options for possible recognition of Palestinian state. Yeah, okay, dude. Sure. American foreign policy summarized by Benny Boy. Israelis like to build, Arabs like to bomb crap, and live in open sewage. This is not a difficult issue. Hashtag settlements rock. That's it. Anyway.
Escalation, but certainly America is setting out how it will respond after those deadly attacks at the weekend, but they say they do it in a calculated manner, at the same time sending a message to Iran that this sort of activity from their proxies will not be tolerated. Matthew.
Nick Peake there in Jerusalem. Thanks very much for the perspective where you are. Let's go back to Washington to our State Department correspondent Tom Bateman, who was listening to all of that. And Tom, what was your assessment?
Well, let's talk about Iran first of all, because, you know, what is new today is that our colleagues at CBS News reporting that the approval has been given for strikes over a series of days. And crucial.
What I mean by collaborative is like, this probably is not collaborative. Here's what my assumption is. Okay. Wee woo, speculation alert. The United States of America went to Iranian proxies or went to like the Iranian spokespeople and whatnot and told them, hey, you got to give us a fucking dub here. Okay. We have to hit some shit. And then Iran probably was like, if you hit our shit, we will fight back. Okay. We will have our red lines and we will enforce those red lines. If you go above those red lines, we will fucking fight back. So then America was like, all right, well, here's what we're going to fight against. These are the positions that we're going to bomb. The IRGC pulls out. Maybe like some of the militia pulls out too from those positions. You blow up a bunch of places. You blow up a bunch of places that are going to be mostly empty or maybe have like some militia in it. Okay, what the fuck is going on? Hold up one moment. And you know, that way, win-win. America looks good. America gets a little bit of a dub.
Crucially on Iranian personnel and facilities, but not inside Iran itself. Now, I think there's two things behind this. The fact that this information is now coming out, because what we heard from Lloyd Austin, as they always say, they're not going to sort of telegraph their military action. They're not going to speculate before it happens on exactly where may be targeted. That's the very sort of public from the podium line. But this information is now coming out obviously from elsewhere in the administration, because I think what they want to do is to show to the Iran hawks here in Washington that they are going to respond decisively. It is coming, but they're kind of keeping things in a holding pattern, because people will be asking the question, well, why haven't there been any military strikes already since these 3 soldiers were killed at the weekend? So I think there's one thing to say about the targeting, and that is it's very notable that this does not mention Iran itself. That's what some Iran hawks here want to see, but it does talk about Iranian personnel and facilities in Iraq and Syria. Now, that is still would be a very, very considerable action. There are Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, Iranian personnel in parts of Iraq and Syria. So the targeting of them by the US would be significant. That is supposed to meaningfully deter further strikes against US personnel. But, you know, the fact is the reported approval here doesn't appear to be against Iran itself. They're trying not to draw in Tehran into a wider confrontation, direct action.
Mehmet Walsho says, instead of targeting foreign nations you've meddled with for decades and instead, I don't know, target your healthcare and shit education, yeah, good luck. Yeah, this is at the heart of my argument for decades at this point. I'm always saying this exact same thing. How about we do a war on like actually fucking things that genuinely, legitimately harm Americans? Okay, how about we do that? Anyway, we can't though.
between the US and the Iranians. And I think it's important here that, they've also mentioned the weather. And I think they talk about cloud cover. I think there is a suggestion this perhaps hasn't happened so far because they haven't got the weather to guarantee the targeting. That's a kind of sidebar mention towards those more hawkish members of Congress that I mentioned. They're perhaps suggesting this is why it hasn't happened yet.
Really briefly, Tom, I mentioned there a really lengthy apology for that hospital stay, that cancer diagnosis that he'd had, but he'd kept it from his department, the public and the president. He went a great length to go through the detail of all of that. This, I think, the first news conference he's actually had since all of that controversy blew up.
Yeah, I mean, it's the first time he's been at the Pentagon publicly since all of this. This has been this has put huge pressure on Joe Biden during, the biggest military conflagration in the Middle East, in many, many years that he's been, this crisis that he's been trying to deal with. He's had his own defense secretary, literally taking part in calls about operational activity from his hospital bed.
Do they intentionally mispronounce words? Yes, bro. They're British. Okay. Controversy. Yeah, it's great. Lloyd Austin is supposed to be the big guy. Okay. Lloyd Austin is supposed to be the wheeler and dealer in this situation too, like more so than even Anthony Blinken. So the fact that he's out here dealing with fucking cancer and is like mostly in the hospital bed kind of puts things into a really weird situation.
On an issue of transparency, of accountability, because the senior level of the administration didn't know about the fact he was hospitalized at the start. So we had this very, very lengthy apology, a very, very lengthy explanation, as he put it, as to why he hadn't told the president at the start, and he said he was very sorry for that. It's been a very difficult episode, both for the White House and for the Pentagon during this very serious.
Yeah. Yeah, here's what I was talking about, by the way. Here's the horniness that you have from the likes of Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham and others look at the situation and go, it's not hard enough. We have to kill Iranians and hit them hard and hit them directly. Which, in my opinion, is one, immoral, two, really fucking stupid, and will escalate conflict, pull us into fucking World War III, okay? I don't know. It's just, there is no upside to this whatsoever.
Reaction, South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham. Senator, good to see you. Let me begin tonight with this. And I did, by the way, love your comments that they'll have blood on their hands, what's happening in the hearing today. We just had Josh Hawley on about. Okay, Joe Biden said he's going to respond. There's been nearly 200 attacks.
Yeah, he's going to respond, except not hard enough. This actually is a perfectly analogous situation to what I always say. Pull yourself out of like pull yourself away from the actual story that we're covering for a brief moment. Let's take a deep breath and let's look at the situation that we have in front of us. Okay? Joe Biden, behaving in an incredibly reactionary manner, is never going to get the proper recognition from the right, because it doesn't matter. They will always defeat you. They're the right. They're the right wing. They're the real reactionaries. No matter how far right you go as a Democrat, you will always lose to the real right wing. You cannot out patriot them. You cannot out racist them. You cannot out compete them on immigration. And the Democratic Party in this last quarter, for some weird reason, maybe because they just genuinely want to lose, I don't fucking know, has decided, oh yeah, no, what we should be doing is hit the most incredibly reactionary strategies that we possibly could, lending credence to the psychopathic nonsense that the Republicans push for on a daily basis, and completely lose to them. We're losing the arguments across the board. There is no counter messaging against immigration being perceived as a problem, a national security problem. It's done. We've given up on that front completely. Okay? There is no counter messaging against like potentially de-escalating conflict. We've completely lost ground on that front too. Okay. It's just terrible. This is why I say it doesn't matter what I do or what I say or what you do or what you say. You will never be able to change the results of an election if the Democratic Party itself is doing everything it can to lose. Okay? John Fetterman waved the Israeli flag from the roof of a roof at anti-Israeli protesters that showed up at his house in Braddock, and the red pilling of Fetterman continues. Yeah, I saw this. This is like so weird. It's such a weird thing that he's doing. It's just so odd. He has become more pro-Israel than pro-Pennsylvania. Most historians estimate the U.S. to be a right-wing authoritarian dictatorship by 2040. Get the fuck out of here. Come to Germany is the better Turkey. Yeah, no. Germany is also awful, especially when it comes to Israel. Like, is it the stroke? I don't know.
Against American service members in Iraq and Syria. This day was inevitable because Joe didn't lift a finger. With over 175 attacks, he didn't do a thing except take out an empty warehouse. So he's emboldened Iran the way I see it. What's your take?
Germany is also going full tilt fash. What are you talking about? AfD and its rise to prominence has been, you know, pretty devastating. Every European country is going full fash, okay? Direct descendants of fascists are no longer afraid. They are no longer afraid to push fascist opinions publicly. You got Geert Wilders in the Netherlands. You have the AfD in Germany. You have Marine Le Pen in France. These are all of the people. Yeah, Italy is another one. Italy's perfectly represented to this too. Italy currently is run by a fascist, like an open, out and about fascist. Something that I have brought forward time and time again. A party that was openly Nazi 20 years ago is now the third biggest in Sweden. That's another one. And it all happened because of the capitulation that supposedly center-left parties made towards fascist reactionary politics as they simultaneously allowed all of the social safety nets to be crippled. Okay? And instead of recognizing that this was actually diminishing the quality of life of the public, many people saw as their social safety nets were withering away and their quality of life was actually getting worse, they also saw a bunch of people that don't look like them entering the country. So they hyper-focused on that and they went, oh, it must be because we now have like more Muslims here. Okay? It's a great way. If you want to privatize every sector that was previously nationalized or previously socialized, the greatest thing you can do is slowly but surely move towards undermining the public sector and defund it year over year over year. You can't do it at once. You have to do it over the course of like many decades. It's the frog boiling in the pan analogy, and before you know it, you're boiled. You're done. You're dead. And they do that, and while they're pulling on that one front with the inevitable interest of genuinely privatizing all of those sectors, okay, with the influx of cheap labor coming from refugee status migrants and just immigrants in general, the natural-born citizens of said nations become more and more reactionary because they associate cheap immigrant labor with the real problem. The real problem is not cheap immigrant labor. Okay? The real problem is the government's personally withering away all of those social institutions that you took for granted year over year as they kept saying, yeah, no, it's the migrants that are at fault here. Anyway.
Well, number one, you're dead right. Why didn't this happen on Trump's watch? Iran was afraid of Trump. He killed the head of their Revolutionary Guard, Soleimani. Biden has yet to hit Iran directly. The Iranians could care less how many Houthis you kill. They could care less how many Iraqi militia you killed. The only way
That's insane. We have to strike Iran directly is an insane statement that you are making. This should be, I don't know. You should be, I don't know how to describe it. This is not a thing that you should be able to say with no pushback whatsoever. But here's where we're at now.
the way they will change your behavior and stop killing Americans and attacking our troops and trying to bomb ships in the Red Sea is for Joe Biden to hit their oil infrastructure and start killing their soldiers inside of Iran. I'm not asking to invade Iran, but I'm calling on President Biden tonight. Go to the source of the problem. If you don't hit the Iranian oil infrastructure and hit them in the wallet and make them fear you, they're going to keep killing our soldiers. To the 3 families whose loved one lost their life, it breaks my heart this was all preventable. So, Mr. President, hit Iran and hit them now and hit them hard to protect Americans in harm's way.
I don't know if he has it in him.
Yeah, dude, that will definitely make the situation better. You know? It'll definitely make the situation for Americans better. Just like American civilians and certainly American military in the region. Great idea, man. Thank you. He's not asking to start a war, but starting a war would be so sick, is what he's basically saying. Anyway, I'm going to move on from this. Here, what is
Joining
this?
us now is Admiral James Stavridis, the NBC News chief international analyst.
This is like, I like that we're hitting both sides of the political spectrum here. On the one hand, we went to Fox News where Lindsey Graham is like, we got to hit Iran and hit Iran hard. On the other side, we go to MSNBC and you have the wife of Alan Greenspan at MSNBC interviewing a general who is like, we have to hit Iran and hit it hard. This is how you manufacture consent. This is how you arrive at this bipartisan consensus that is always reactionary, that is always psychotic, that will always backfire. Okay? But guess what, dude? Guess what? We'll make a lot more weapons. Okay? Do you want any social safety nets? Fuck you. Do you want weapons? Well, we're going to make more weapons. Okay? Whether you like it or not. Okay. Love when we got like psychopathic generals that are on MSNBC going, we have to hit Iran and hit Iran hard. And it's like usually a dude that is directly working with the federal government on defense contracts after his 40-year military career as being like the most bloodthirsty general. It's like, yeah, that's right. This is here we have on MSNBC tonight, Mr. Spider Rapist. Here it is. This is General Douglas Spider Rapist McDouglas. And it's like he also now works for fucking, it literally it's always some shit like that. It's like General Douglas Spider Rapist McDouglas here joining us now to talk about the level-headed response to the Iranian acts of violence.
Former Supreme Allied Commander of NATO. Well, Admiral, you've seen the drama coming from the Pentagon today. We should first point out that the Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, he said that he was clearly limping. He said he's still recovering. He's having physical therapy, but he was very open about the ongoing investigation and the fact that basically he messed up.
Yeah, Lloyd Austin, whom I've known for decades, did what good leaders do and what men and women of integrity do. When they make a mistake, they admit it, they own it, they improve, they go forward, and any further action would be up to the president. And I think Lloyd Austin did exactly the right thing in coming forward now. He made a mistake earlier, but he's handled it as well as you possibly can at this point. I wish him well in his recovery. He's a fine military officer, and I think continues to serve the nation.
I think all of us wish him well.
Okay, get to the blood. Get to the blood.
Place of their choosing, and he pointed out that, as you know better than anyone, as the former Supreme Allied Commander of NATO, that will depend on a lot of other factors: how people are moving around, reducing collateral damage, civilian deaths, as well as weather and other conditions. But this has also permitted people to move, to get out, to evacuate some of these militias. So are they taking too long to retaliate?
These are military judgments that are being rendered minute by minute inside.
Dude, every time the person that is like the interviewer, doesn't matter if we're talking about MSNBC, doesn't matter if we're talking about CNN, doesn't matter if we're talking about Fox News, is literally asking, why are we not like skull fucking the Iranians? Okay. Hello, Supreme Commander of NATO Allied Forces, sir. When will we start skull fucking the Iranian soldiers? Okay. Why have we not canoed every Iranian child's skull? When will blood be spilled, sir? It's literally the most insane thing. American foreign policy is Holden Blood Feast. Republican from Iowa, 118 years old. Please, God, let us nuke Iran. Nothing else matters. I'll do anything, please. I just want to see burning flesh one last time before I die. Respectable bipartisan. Okay? It is true. Beanie Tuesday nailed it 100%. Brother, you are literally describing the gay airplane meme. Yeah. It's true, though. It actually is true. And where are all the people now that were like, Biden greatly de-escalated the drone wars, as a matter of fact? Well, I'm so glad he did, so we could just like catch up at the last quarter. You know what I mean? Like Atlas 2 just caught up at the top of the hour and gifted 10 people 10 gifted subs, so they no longer have to see the ads at the top of the hour. You know what I mean? It's just how it is. It's just how it works. Yeah, this was a great meme at the time and still bangs. Anyway, here's the 3-minute ad break now, ladies and gentlemen. If you no longer want to see those ads, all you need to do is subscribe for $5 or for free with the Twitch Prime by connecting your Amazon Prime account to your Twitch account, where you get 1 free Prime subscription a month. Use it on your favorite broadcaster. Hopefully that's me. Here's the 3-minute ad break now, brother. We must rain blood upon their heads, everyone. This is my foreign policy. Midterm elections are coming up. Keep an eye out on these rising stars, the 2018 election candidates of note. Weasel Snrat, Republican from New York, principled lawyer. Main principle is to only defend rapists. Stuart Paul, Republican from Ohio, libertarian, but also wants to use taxpayer money to find and kill his ex-wife. Jillian Drillint, Democrat from California, founder of a startup that sends underprivileged youth to fight in the IDF. Oh, that's such a good one. Numbers Fuckstein, Democrat from Maryland, just wants to fuck around with tax credits and shit to see what happens. Dylan Sled, Democrat from Pennsylvania, unemployed college dropout, heard about UBI on a podcast and went, oh, what? Sick. Free college, free healthcare, free schmurda, vastly more qualified than 99% of Congress. Scum shit, Republican from North Carolina, Nazi. Norm Respectable, Republican from Montana, also a Nazi. Dresden Norris, independent from Washington, spends 5 hours a day on Twitter, vows to have the rest of Congress executed if elected, encyclopedic knowledge of foreign policy, but doesn't know what a filibuster is. Dorian Salazar O'Malley, Democrat from Michigan, community organizer, highly unusual candidate, exhibit qualities of a member of the fabled white working class, but isn't white. 538.com rates him most likely to end up mysteriously dead a week before election. Holden Blood Feast, Republican from Iowa. We've already covered that a million times over. 119 years old. Please, God, let us just nuke. Let us nuke Iran. Iran, nothing else matters. I'll do anything, please. I just want to see burning flesh one last time before I die. Respectable bipartisan. Sex Tricker, independent from Florida. Oh my God, is that his real name? Holy shit, elect him. Ha ha ha. What the fuck is going on? Hillary, Democrat. Who cares? Oh, come on, not again. Only lost the election because her controller was broken. Third time is the charm. These are all really cringe. Sorry, this is some Reddit socialist shit. This is what is known as a joke. And this is what is known as what? What are you talking about? Being hawkish on all Middle Eastern states is the epic-based socialist position. Haven't you heard? Yeah, those guys we joke about. I don't know if you know that. Like, the update to this would literally be like, I mean, these are all candidates that are running, but the update to this would be like, you know, xylitol Magnus, okay? If we were doing like BreadTube and like political commentators, it would be like xylitol Magnus, okay? Had a sex scandal 5 years ago, okay? Had a sex scandal 5 years ago. As questionable ethics on pedophilia and loves to debate it anyway, okay? Went through a libertarian phase and might still be in that libertarian phase. Last but not least, will always take the position of American foreign policy, will suspiciously always align himself or themselves or herself with the American foreign policy. You need to debate a fascist? It is needed for discourse? No, thank you. Okay. That is extremely specific, and yet it describes so many people. I know. That's why I don't actually fucking mention a real name, and I just made up a name that... Genuine question, why is it always your position that the U.S. should just take it on the chin and move on? I understand that the full-blown war should not be started or nothing for a couple casualties, but at some point the U.S. military has to retaliate. Genuine response to your genuine question. Why the fuck is the United States of America there to begin with? Why do they have to be there? Why must they also always have to retaliate? You have to take it on the chin if you're there. You shouldn't be there to begin with, but if you are there, you have to take it on the fucking chin. Why? Because you are the superpower. That's it. Democrat, Arizona. Yeah. Like, these guys are not attacking us inside of United States boundaries or United States borders. These guys are attacking our soldiers that are weirdly and suspiciously planted all across the Middle East. But because that is like such a normal position for many Americans that we take for granted, that it literally, no one ever asked like, wait a minute, why the fuck are there soldiers in like Jordan? Why the fuck are there soldiers in Iran, or not Iran, sorry, Iraq and Syria? Why are there so many U.S. military bases? Like, why are they on the oil fields? It's almost exactly like Israel. They keep sticking their nose in shit until they get some pushback and oh, how dare they must retaliate. I don't know what this map is. I suspect is this like all the bases that the United States has in the region? Is that what you are showing me? I can't wait for like one of these bases to not be correct so that like every fucking neoliberal NATO head on Twitter could be like, look at this fucking dumbass dude. There's no base there. It's probably dated. Wow. Out of the 85 military bases that you're showing on this map, one of them actually moved recently. Haha, therefore I have owned you. The major point that you were trying to make is that, you know, why the fuck are there so many goddamn bases in this region? This one, I know personally, literally has nukes in it. Why is Iran surrounding the American bases? That's what I'm saying. It's like, Iran, how about you fucking chill out, you know? Haha, there's only 84 bases there, dipshit. You don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, exactly. Fucking owned. You mean like this video?
Save it.
The alt-right playbook. It's so funny. Innuendo Studio still makes these videos about like the alt-right. But nowadays, I feel like a lot of the bill fits mostly like the alt-libs, I guess, that behave in identical manners to the alt-right and defend, I guess, like a lot of the positions of like American foreign policy that most parts of the alt-right also agree with the exception of like the Nazis that deviate away from the rest of the alt-right that hate Israel because they're Jewish. You know? It's so cool that now just every American has, just like in the immediate aftermath of like 9/11, Americans have been able to basically fucking hold hands together and decide like how hard we want to kill Arabs. And that's the major distinction. The map I linked is from a 2012 article. You will get corrected. Watch out. I'm so sorry. I mean, it's fine. I already made fun of it. he's got good content on Seen Through Deceptive Rhetoric. No, I know. It's just like people that used to troll on 4chan but just found out about Nordic healthcare and social democracy and only support white trans people but will melt POC. Yeah, it's like a very weird, it's a very weird, oddly specific group of like new Hitlers, I think. It's just like the new wave of fascism with liberal aesthetics is awesome. And it's kind of funny because like even the alt-right, because neoliberalism has created this like liberal monoculture, even the dumbass right-wingers are also using like bodies and spaces ass language. You know what I mean? So like everyone is basically coming to this middle where people are like, actually, Sweaty, I'm a white identitarian and you are attacking point of privilege. Your reactionary sentiment towards my white skin, which is an inalienable characteristic of mine, is actually quite concerning. And it's like, dude, what are you saying right now? You're just like fucking a woke white supremacist. Like, what is happening? And then liberals do a similar thing as well. It's so funny. They call Garrett Wilders a conservative leftist now. I don't even know what that fucking means at this point. Literally, no one has said that ever. My friend, this is good. I'm glad that you said that because that means that you don't go on Reddit. Okay? That means you do not go on Reddit. And that's really cool of you. I don't do it. Don't go on Reddit. Of course I don't. Yep, there you go. So there you've never actually heard it. Stay away from r/LSF live stream fails. Stay away from r/neoliberal because let me tell you, you're going to get a lot of that. Okay. Don't go on r/world news. Don't go on r/Europe. Stay away from Reddit in general. It doesn't help that there are super famous YouTube streamers convincing impressionable young would-be socialists and former groypers that it's actually very based on socialists and anti-imperialists to want to melt China or whatever. No, that stuff doesn't matter. No, that shit's for the birds. That is like incredibly specific and like incredibly marginal, just annoying to our little circle of the internet type situation. No, the broader politics does not come from YouTubers. Okay? Like there's no real influence there. Okay? The broader politics comes from the underlying material conditions and the multi-billion-dollar operation that is built on top of that is consistently manufacturing consent. That's precisely why we're currently watching a General McFuckstick over here, former Supreme Admiral Commander of NATO forces, say the identical things that Lindsey Graham is saying with like some slight deviation, right? Maybe he's not going to say we have to immediately melt Iran. We have to nuke Iran in the same way that Lindsey Graham was saying earlier, but like the energy is there.
U.S. Central Command, by the way, Lloyd Austin's command when he was a 4-star, so he knows this region extremely well. What's important here is that this is going to be a campaign, not a one-off, not a simple one-time precision-guided strike against a particular target. It's going to be an ongoing series of attacks, I think, against not only the Houthi Red Sea maritime threat that you were showing earlier, but also against these militias in Iraq and Syria. This will go on, I think, for a number of weeks and probably accelerate in terms of the hammer blows we are landing. At that point, Iran, hopefully, will take control of these militias and pull them back. Otherwise, Andrea, I think the United States will have to at least consider strikes against Iran.
See, this is the reasoned, more tempered approach, which inevitably also is like, well, the United States will have no option but to nuke Iran. It's so funny that this is literally the MSNBC line. The Fox News line, as I showed you earlier, is nuke Iran now. The MSNBC line, led by a dude who is like getting, I assume, money from the defense industry now, because every single one of these guys are. I don't know what his background specifically is, but he was the the supreme commander of NATO or whatever, if he's not getting if he's not lining his pockets with a shit ton of money from different interest groups and specifically the defense industry, then he's a fucking fool. Okay. The difference is literally the rhetoric of offense versus the rhetoric of defense. No, the Republicans are also saying we have to be offensive in a defensive posture. He's also coming to that same conclusion. He's just saying we got to wait a week to do it. That's it. He very much is. Yep. Don't trust the defense industry's Ukraine pundits. And they did this. They did this for a year. Okay? They did this for a year. That's why it's not the fucking dumbass YouTubers that like upset you when you hear people go like, I'm an anarcho-NATOist or something. It's not those guys, okay? It's not those guys that have like cultivated a space that is like incredibly horny for American foreign policy to be almost identically aligned with the reactionary Republican right, okay? Those guys are marginal. It's just what you see on Twitter. So like, because we have horse blinders, we think like, oh, well, these guys are dominating every conversation. They're so profoundly impactful. No, this is the real impact. It's having former generals and people who were like lobbyists directly for the defense industry go on every night and consistently push these positions over and over and over again, normalize the idea that America must retaliate, America must be violent. Okay? That is infinitely more impactful on the American collective consciousness and how jingoistic we are and how we become like little Western chauvinists anytime like America's feelings are hurt. It comes from this. Okay? I was talking about this with a buddy of mine who's, let's say his immediate relative used to be a CNN producer and like a die-in-the-wool, like regular, straight down ballot, strong D Democratic voter. Producer for CNN, no longer a producer. And one of the things that like he readily admits, and I think like a lot of people, as a matter of fact, that work in this field, in mainstream media readily admit is how unimaginably disingenuous the Israeli sources that they put on television are. Okay? They know. Every single person at CNN knows that when you put a fucking Israeli official on television, they're going to lie. Okay? And they do. They lie nonstop. We've shown it time and time again. They lie so much that they've limited their bookings now. But for the first couple of months, they booked them nonstop. Anytime they're blowing up a hospital, you got to have Jonathan Concuncrius or whatever the fuck that fat-headed dildo, whatever his last name is, go on and be like, these are terror babies. You do not understand. Jake Tapper, these are babies of terror. That's why we have to do this. Like, literally, they were these babies were throwing terror rocks. You know? Yeah, here it is. Our Nazi correspondent, like, he did that. They did that every fucking Jonathan Cocksuckrius. Fucking got him. They did that every day. They did that every day, every fucking day. Do you think that is not important? Do you think that like that doesn't have staying power? Your grandparents don't, your liberal grandparents don't think that CNN is lying. They look at Jake Tapper and go, he's a handsome man. He's such a handsome man. He's so honest. I remember how he spoke out against Donald Trump. They have no framework where they think like maybe CNN has a different interest here, okay? They have no way of like looking at this or like reading the New York Times and thinking like, I wonder if the New York Times is biased. And the unfortunate problem is that many people who do recognize that these outlets are biased end up becoming psychopathic right-wingers who think everything is a psyop. Taylor Swift is a psyop. The New York Times is trying to make me gay by making me take a vaccine. It sucks. I feel so lonely all the time because those who are like supposed to be media literate, who try to like exercise a little bit of caution and like see through the lines and read between the lines and recognize that like American State Department is always going to have bipartisan consensus, and like our media operations are regularly going to churn out propaganda that is like very, very pro-Israel, even when you don't think that it is pro-Israel, for example, or pro-war in general, even when you don't think that it's pro-war, for example. It just sucks that like, it sucks that when you have a more reasonable approach to this kind of thing, many of the other people on the sidelines that actually are like fake news, they're running the fake news line over and over again, are like weirdos. They're psychos. They're just anti-vaxxers and QAnon supporters and shit like that. It sucks. I want to pull them back into like reality, and I can't do that. And I can't even pull the fucking liberals away from the understanding that like the media does regularly have a serious bias when it comes to churning out pro-State Department propaganda. And I think this is a perfect demonstration of that. That's why I showed you the right-wing moment here, and that's why I showed you what the MSNBC line is on, striking Israel.
On directly. Let's hope we don't get there.
Well, there are a number of people in Congress, as you know, in both parties calling for exactly that. There have been more than 160 attacks against U.S. and international forces, and nothing seems to have deterred these Iran-backed militias.
Did I say striking Israel? Sorry, that's crazy. Striking Iran, of course.
Absolutely correct, and I think we're at the final exit before the tunnel, so to speak. We need to be communicating that directly to Iran. I think we are doing so. We need a very robust series of strikes. And by the way, not just against militias, but against Iranian Revolutionary Guards who are outside Iran conducting the training, the organizing, the equipping of these militias, this so-called.
All right, yeah, every day is the same. U.S. shoots down missile posing imminent threat to U.S. aircraft. Not to mention, libs have reflexively latched on to mainstream media more in reaction to the right's rejection of it. I mean, to a certain degree, I think so. Speech is heavily controlled in many different ways with mainstream media. People that are honest speaking generally do not rise to the top. Or, look, the way it works is that there is a neat confine that, like, there's a box of ideas that are permissible, that are appropriate, that you can speak on. Okay? If you are anti-capitalist in any meaningful way, or if you're anti-American State Department in any meaningful way, which is just another way of saying anti-capitalist because American State Department operates at the behest of capital, then you have to toe a very serious line. You have to toe a very specific line, and if you deviate away from that, you'll get clapped. On the right, that line is on the right. That line is straight up like openly being a Nazi. If you are openly a white supremacist Nazi and you say that you're a white supremacist Nazi, you pull a fucking Kanye West, then you've crossed the boundary. Okay? But everything before that, like Tucker Carlson, you have not crossed that boundary. Tucker Carlson is a fucking straight up white nationalist, right? But he never says he's a straight up white nationalist. He simply asks, what's going on? These are all coincidences, right? And when he does that kind of rhetoric, it doesn't matter. But like if you're marginally center left on some of these issues that puts you at odds with the interests of capital, you're done. You're out. You're not getting elevated. You are not going to get elevated. So there is no like extreme principles on both sides that are equivalent to one another that you can actually point to. There's no moral equivalence there anyway, right? But there is nothing. I mean, there's nothing that even comes near. Like Mehdi Hassan is a liberal in many respects, right? He's a liberal in many respects. And yet he still got punished. He still got clapped. Who is doing the elevating? What do you mean? What do you mean who's doing the elevating? I never comprehend, though, how do they benefit from lying at the behest of the government if they don't work for the government? Wouldn't the truth be more controversial, more profit? How are the financial interests tied to agitprop? Very easy. Okay. There are a shit ton of pharmaceutical ads on CNN. There are a shit ton of healthcare ads on CNN. So if you are pro-Medicare for all, openly a socialist, openly claiming that we have to eviscerate the pharmaceutical industry's profit motive, we have to destroy the healthcare industry, the for-profit healthcare industry, you're not going to get elevated because you can't say that in between Concerta commercials, okay? You can't say that in between Blue Cross Blue Shield commercials. That's like nutty. Why do you think I don't have a shit ton of sponsorships? Well, one, because I don't personally take them on when they come through. But the other reason is because sponsors hear what I have to say. I don't think those things are related, Hassan. Wait, what? I mean, here, this is a timeless
censoring organization.
Here, Noam Chomsky writes, manufacturing consent. Andrew Marr asked him a question. You talk about censorship. You talk about censorship in organizations like, and he very quickly retaliates and says, I'm not talking about censorship at all. I'm talking about elevation. And he describes how this operates. This is a perfect answer to your question.
Tell me how that works. You're not suggesting that proprietors phone one another up, or that many journalists get their copy spiked, as we say?
It's actually, Orwell, you may recall, has an essay called Literary Censorship in England, which was supposed to be the introduction to Animal Farm, except that it never appeared, in which he points out, look, I'm writing about a totalitarian society, but in free democratic England, it's not all that different. And then he says unpopular ideas can be silenced without any force. And then he gives a two-sentence response, which is not very profound, but captures it. He says two reasons. First, the press is owned by wealthy men who have every interest in not having certain things appear. But second, the whole educational system, from the beginning on through, just gets you to understand that there are certain things you just don't say. Well, spelling these things out, that's perfectly correct. I mean, it's the first sentence is what we expand on.
This is what I don't get, because it suggests that, I mean, I'm a journalist, people like me are self-censoring.
No, not self-censoring. There's a filtering system that starts in kindergarten, goes all the way through, and doesn't work 100%, but it's pretty effective. It selects for obedience and subordination, and especially, I think that's
so stroppy people won't make it to positions of influence.
Behavior problems, or if you read applications to a graduate school, you see that people will tell you he's not doesn't get along too well.
It's like it's like the drill tweet, you know? Remember on like October 8th or 9th or 10th or something, like Kick 100% went to every big streamer. There is a reason they didn't go to you, even though regardless you would have never taken a deal. Yeah. Listen. Well, I mean, I guess by way of XUC, they kind of tried to prod that out, and I was literally like, fuck no. But, yeah, because they can't afford me, dog. That's why. By the way, as I've said before, for the record, like being consistent and being principled in this situation doesn't fucking matter, okay? It doesn't. You just keep getting punished. If anything, people will turn around and go, yeah, dude, there's no way he's actually this consistent. We must find a hypocrisy here. So, you know, he's just, it usually doesn't matter. Anyway, yeah, this is the tweet that I'm thinking of. The Middle East is complicated because it's bad to support smothering orphans in hellfire, but I also really want to graduate Harvard. Okay, that's it. Same principle works in that in the media as well. It's like, yeah, like internally, I think what Israel's doing is like kind of fucked up, but also simultaneously, I kind of want to, you know, make more money and get elevated to a position of like executive producer inevitably. And that's it.
With his colleagues, you know how to interpret those things.
I'm just interested in this because I was brought up, like a lot of people, probably post-Watergate film and so on, to believe that journalism was a crusading craft and that there were a lot of disputatious, stroppy, difficult people in journalism. And I have to say,
I guess what I'm saying is what makes an org like the Reuters or AP objective, but CNN and others not? The former arguably do more original reporting and scoops than the latter. Wait, I never said the AP or Reuters is objective either. No, I don't think the Associated Press is objective. The Associated Press, for example, in this regard, the Associated Press also is not even close to being objective. Okay? Guess what? For example, when the Israeli death squad went in to a West Bank hospital in Jenin, okay, the Associated Press literally said the Hamas-backed health ministries hospital. It's the fucking West Bank. It's actually the Palestinian Authority that runs that hospital. Technically. Well, not really, because it's still, I believe it's like the Jenin brigades, but, or I don't know how exactly the hospital structure works in Jenin, but it's certainly not Hamas. Like, that's, the point is, like, it's little things like that, little errors like that here and there that demonstrate biases, right? There's no objectivity there. And yeah, thinking about that, it's like there's a person that I know personally that was fired in 2022 for being outspoken about Israel. If you recall, what was her name? Damn it! Like literally, they fired a journalist specifically for being outspoken about Israel. So Emily Wilder, yes. No, not Katie Halper. Emily Wilder. So my point is, I think actually Katie Halper might have been fired from somewhere too. I don't really remember, but my point is like none of these guys are actually objective. They come close to objectivity. I guess you could ask the question like, what is objective, right? Katie Halper got fired from The Guardian for saying Israel was an apartheid.
I think I know some of them.
Well, I know some of the best and best-known investigative reporters in the
not from The Guardian, from The Hill.
United States. I won't mention names, but whose attitude toward the media is much more cynical than mine. In fact, they regard the media as a sham, and they know and they consciously talk about how they try to play it like a violin. If they see a little opening, they'll try to squeeze something in that ordinarily wouldn't make it through. And it's perfectly true that I'm sure you're speaking for the majority of journalists who are trained, have it driven into their heads that this is a crusading profession, adversarial, we stand up against power, a very self-serving view. On the other hand, in my opinion, I hate to make a value judgment, but the better journalists, and in fact the ones who are often regarded as the best journalists, have quite a different picture. And I think...
Yeah. And they usually do get the international recognition that they deserve, unless they are still alive, like Seymour Hersh, in which case, during the duration of their lifetime, they will still get ritualistically humiliated and bullied by mainstream media and constantly chastised, regardless of the fact that their contribution to the field is phenomenal. Okay? I guess what I'm wondering is, what's in it for CNN to warmonger as opposed to just reporting the news in a naive sense? They can still have access they want without being outwardly opinionated and pro-war, yet they're always pro-war. No, they can't. And they also want to spice it up. And Associated Press is not getting the same level of like advertisements from all of these like Raytheon and the defense industry in the same way that CNN is. It is a direct... The interest of the media overall, whether people recognize it or not, whether it's like people deliberately going, I'm going to do this, I'm going to promote this position, whether people recognize it or not, is still going to be aligned with, State Department narratives, but also aligned with the corporate oligopoly, because they are getting paid by the corporate oligopoly. Okay? Most people also don't recognize that they're being biased, as Chomsky's mentioning, because like if you're so ingrained in the liberal monoculture, then you don't even sometimes think about it. You just think like, well, what do you mean? This is just the truth. This is just the objective truth. And people that are naysayers against the objective truth are probably naysayers because they have like a secondary bias here, like they're Muslim, like Hassan. Maybe they just have a fuck America, I hate America attitude or something, not realizing that I live in the United States of America and obviously would not want it to fucking fall apart. Okay?
Under new threats as the Pentagon prepares to retaliate for the deadly drone strike in Jordan that killed 3 American soldiers. Chief Global Affairs anchor Martha Raddatz is in Jordan. Good morning, Martha.
Good morning, George. We are in one of the most remote parts of Jordan. The Syrian border is just behind me. Iraq is off to my left. These are the countries from which the Iranian-backed militants have launched attacks against Americans. This morning, the U.S. finalizing retaliatory strikes for Sunday's drone hit here in Jordan that killed 3 American soldiers and wounded 47 others, the majority of the wounded National Guard soldiers. The deadly strike, one of nearly 170 attacks aimed at Americans in the region by Iranian-backed militants, the latest in the Red Sea. The U.S. conducting self-defense strikes in Yemen on a Houthi drone ground control station and 10 one-way drones. Just hours earlier, the USS Carney shooting down an anti-ship ballistic missile fired by the group, in addition to 3 Iranian drones in less than an hour. U.S. forces also striking down a Houthi surface-to-air missile Wednesday, which officials say presented an imminent threat to U.S. aircraft.
Here's a really cool, really good way to like de-escalate and engage in like actual self-defense that preserves the lives of many of these soldiers. Okay, these brave soldiers, the merchant marines and the like. Get the fuck out of there, and also listen to the demands being made, the very reasonable demands being made by the Ansar Allah government. That's a great way, is on 2 fronts. Okay. On 2 fronts, it's a win-win-win-win-win. You know what I mean? This guy has a different opinion, though. He said, nuke Yemen.
Operating in the area. This after the USS Gravely intercepted a Houthi missile heading toward the ship, splashing into the sea within only 1 mile of the warship, the closest call yet. Now, all eyes waiting for the response to the tragic attack in Jordan, with the White House for the first time blaming the Iran-backed militant group Islamic Resistance in Iraq, an umbrella group of numerous militias. The Pentagon preparing to unleash a multi-day, multi-target campaign bigger than anything seen this far, in hopes deterrence will prevent more loss of life. President Biden calling Oneida and Sean Sanders, whose 24-year-old daughter Kennedy was killed in the attack.
I know, everybody, I know there's nothing anybody can say or do to ease the pain. I've been there.
Yes, sir, we understand.
The parents overcome with emotion when the president reveals how their daughter will be honored.
We're promoting her posthumously to sergeant.
Oh, wow, that is the best news I've heard today. Thank you so much. You don't know how much that means to us.
Oh, well, I tell you what.
Dude, it's like, it's such a waste. It's such a waste. Like, she didn't have to die. Why the fuck is she dead? You know what I mean? Why is she in fucking Jordan? And now she's just dead. Oh, it's great. Yeah, she's posthumously elevated to the position of sergeant. It just sucks. It sucks so fucking bad.
It means a lot to me. My son spent a year in Iraq until I lost him. And,
she's not being sarcastic, no.
1% of all these kids are the ones that we're going to take care of 99% of us.
Such heartbreaking scenes. President Biden is not expected to hit Iran directly, fearing the conflict in this region will escalate, but it has already spread far beyond the borders of Gaza. George?
Okay, Martha, thanks. Hi, everyone.
What is this? Why do we have to pretend like we care about soldiers who were there to kill innocent civilians? Why is she signed up to kill Middle Eastern farmers? I mean, I don't know if you know this, but like, she signed up not specifically to be like, I love killing Middle Eastern farmers. She signed up like many others did, okay? To get their fucking college paid for, to have like some semblance of upward social mobility. That's what a big chunk of people sign up for. The idea that like the American military doesn't run on incredibly predatory practices that that specifically target like black and brown communities, for example, and offer some semblance of upward social mobility and educational opportunities as a you know, people say the poverty draft is a lie, right? But what they don't recognize is that like if you are middle class and you want some semblance of upward social mobility, like you have to fucking go to college. And it's incredibly, incredibly expensive. Okay? And you have no other real options. Biden's son died in Iraq? No. He didn't die in Iraq, but he did die as I think a consequence of like the tire smoke that he inhaled. I mean, he died of cancer due to being stationed in a forward operating base where they were fucking burning tires. So, and the tar pits, the burn pits. It's really interesting to think about because it's like Biden couldn't pay for his fucking health care. Like, think about that. Biden couldn't pay for his health care and he had to like, he was going to take out a third mortgage on his house or something. And Barack Obama was like, okay, don't do that. You're the VP. Like, I will pay for it. And yet this man still ran for president against Bernie Sanders because Bernie Sanders was going for Medicare for all. It blows my fucking mind. The U.S. Army's massive socialist jobs program, but man, it's so fucked up and predatory. My cousin got $60K in debt for 1 year of college and opted in the military to continue with schooling without committing financial suicide. Yeah. He literally said he died in Iraq to the woman. Oh, I didn't hear it. All right, anyway, here's the Wall Street Journal, which, by the way, sucks ass, okay? There's some good reporting that comes out of the Wall Street Journal every now and then about Israel, but usually, by and large, their reporting is ass-sucking, okay, of the ass-sucking variety. This is a video where they ask the question, why does the U.S. support and fund Israel so much? Let's take a look. One of the more important states. That's it. That's it. That's it. That's it. Okay. The reason why I'm talking about like Wall Street Journal ass sucking on their coverage is like they had a former IDF PR person writing an article that cleaned up her fucking entire connection to the IDF, where she was like, you know, she was just like posturing with like incredible propaganda recently. Oh yeah, Israel is way, way, way more important than Puerto Rico. Are you kidding me? Anyway. Reading the New York Times and Wall Street Journal is actually part of what started me on the road to leftism. I started wondering why they referred to Israeli soldier deaths so much more empathetically than Palestinian civilians slaughtered, even when the numbers were wildly disparate. This was back in 2014, 2015. Yeah, always. It's a very healthy question to ask, usually. Israel received more in total from the federal government than Mississippi? I don't know about that. But did you see the Wall Street Journal opinion page yesterday? Yes, I did. This is why I'm saying, like, they suck ass, okay? Chicago votes for Hamas. Mayor Brandon Johnson supports a ceasefire in Gaza and not Chicago. That's the editorial board, guys. This is not just like one fucking psycho. This is all the psychos of the Wall Street Journal editorial board. Just something to remember always, okay? If you want to understand like why these guys suck ass, here is 1999 Wall Street Journal editorial board. Pinochet deserves gratitude, not punishment. Here's a Guardian article about Pinochet, and Wall Street Journal says Egypt needs a Pinochet. Can it get away with that? Wall Street Journal in 2000. Pinochet free at last. A brief history from Huffington Post on Wall Street Journal's support of right-wing authoritarianism. This was because they also defended Jair Bolsonaro. Wall Street Journal was very openly in defense of Pinochet long after his death and even up to his death. They consistently talked about how sick he was. When Pinochet died in 2006, more peacefully than any of the more than 3,000 people who we know of who were murdered under his regime, the Journal ran an unsigned editorial that attempted to paint his brutal rule as more complicated than accusing it of murderous human rights atrocities carried out solely for the benefit of wealthy elites might suggest. He took power in a coup in 1973, but ultimately he created an environment where democratic institutions would prevail, the Journal said. So the Wall Street Journal is fascist. The vibes were right in all the wrong ways. The Wall Street Journal isn't fascist in the way that you understand it. They're fascist in the neoliberal way. Okay? That's it. In Peru, Pinochet may be the editorial board's darling, but the journal has found ample time to praise his contemporaries too. They wrote, hailed Peruvian President Alberto Fujimori at the end of his decade in power with a cheerful column that excused the strongman's litany of human rights abuses. In Argentina, gave them some credit. O'Grady and the Wall Street Journal have at least shied away from unabashed praise of Argentina's military dictatorship, which was led by Army Commander Jorge Rafael Videla and ruled the country with an iron fist from 1976 to 1983. Shortly after Argentina returned to democratic governance, he was convicted of crimes against humanity because of the number of political dissidents who appeared during his regime. The worst estimates pin the total somewhere north of 30,000. Okay. In Colombia, former Colombian President Alvaro Uribe was not a dictator, but Uribe, who was in office, exhibited plenty of authoritarian tendencies as he sought to defeat the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, or FARC, the militant left-wing rebel group that was also responsible for widespread human rights violations. Anyway, in Saudi Arabia, when King Salman replaced his nephew with his son as the heir to the throne, the Wall Street Journal predicted that the new crown prince, Mohammed bin Salman, would usher in an era of modernity and reform. In Egypt, Egypt was one of the first countries to overthrow its dictator by popular protest during the Arab Spring, but the Wall Street Journal's extreme relief, Egypt's Army General Abdel Fattah el-Sisi ousted the country's first democratically elected president, Muslim Brotherhood leader Mohamed Morsi, as I've talked about before, just a year after the election. In July 2013, as Barack Obama's administration scrambled for ways to avoid calling the military coup a coup, which would have required a cutoff of U.S. aid, the Wall Street Journal urged for the U.S. to back el-Sisi. Don't worry, we did that. Wall Street Journal won on that front. So yeah, the Wall Street Journal's position is clear. Pro-American dictatorships have more moral scruples, its editorial board wrote during the Arab Spring of 2011, because Wall Street Journal is the most neoliberal institution. And if you listen to neoliberal theorists, they will oftentimes say that I would rather have an authoritarian monarchist as long as they are not abiding by the principles of democracy in the way that we understand it, the tyranny of majority, of course, we don't like that, but instead democratizing the marketplace, ensuring that the markets are alive and well. That's all they care about, okay? That is how neoliberalism works. It's about government interference against democracy in most instances, and certainly against the labor union, okay? It's all about liberalizing markets through government interference, as a matter of fact, not the laissez-faire, not entirely the laissez-faire that we understand with a utilitarian approach, even though it's fraught, fraudulent, and also silly and childish to think that like pure laissez-faire economics would actually fucking yield laissez-faire economics would actually yield positive results. There's still a relatively utilitarian approach in the foundational principles here. They want to help as many people as possible. The neoliberals are like, I don't give a fuck about helping people as long as the markets are the best, because ultimately, as long as the markets with government interference are as free as they possibly can be, then, the strongest will always thrive and survive. And that will be good for people, even if like a lot of people die as a consequence. Okay, I fucking went to like a million different directions here. But anyway, let's get back to Wall Street Journal's video. Why does the U.S. fund and support Israel
more
so
scrutiny
much?
of that aid from the left wing.
It could be good. This could still be like one of those one-off good videos. Funny that like while Bernie is definitely still like a liberal Zionist, he is also one of the loudest critics of Israel in American Congress. I mean, it's true. He literally is. Aside from like Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, and the like, even though after October 7, he certainly has refused to say keywords like ceasefire and consistently held the position that Israel has a right to defend itself over and over again, which led me to obviously take away the Bernie cutout that has sat behind me for many, many years, even though I still love him in my heart and still wish him very well. I feel like he tarnished his legacy. Doesn't matter. He's a liberal Zionist. He fucking went to the kibbutzim in like during his like USSR honeymoon. He fucking loves. There's a part of his heart that still believes that like Israel is a overall good thing. Okay. So it's disappointing. It's disappointing, but it doesn't matter. Ultimately, he's still, in spite of his disappointment, in spite of his disappointment in the aftermath of October 7, he still is literally one of the most critical people against Israel. Think about that. Think about how slanted the American government is, that this dude who refused to push for a ceasefire, this dude who keeps saying Israel has a right to defend itself, Israel has to exist in the way that it does, who, pushes this point, is the guy who's also saying, like, we got to fucking dial it back a little bit. Okay? It's kind of crazy how sad the state of U.S. politics is, the state of affairs. That's it. American foreign policy is bipartisan, and Israel is smack dab in the middle of American foreign policy. It is an unsinkable aircraft carrier in the middle of a resource-rich region that we want to control. It is its very own, unaccountable, yet still very much directed by the United States, espionage agency that is in the region. It's a forward operating base. That's it. That's it. Yeah, when terrorists don't pay a price for their terror, like Israel, they just keep getting louder and prouder.
They cause more chaos and death and more destruction.
He's right. He's right. That's what Israel's doing, dog. Do something. Genocide Joe. That's crazy. Oh my God. Good thing we elected Biden, dude. He's totally going to have a different approach to Israel. Oh, fuck. That's right. He doesn't have the exact opposite approach. He has the exact same approach. Oh, shit.
There has been remarkably strong bipartisan support for aid to Israel, but
so remarkable, so shocking. It's the same thing behind Saudi Arabia. The notion that we have like real distinct policy disagreements between both parties when it comes to American foreign policy is the most foolish, the most idiotic thing I've ever heard in my entire life. There are slight deviations, but it doesn't matter. At the end of the fucking day, America will do what America must. What? They will do Israelis everywhere in Israel?
Along the Gaza Strip. We're going to support.
Also, the weapons cache already in Israel that's technically American, but will used almost at will by Israel. Yeah.
Our close friend and
in its foreign policy.
Thank you for the raid majority report.
One thing that I have talked to officials about in recent weeks is, are there going to be conditions at any point? You criticize Israel's actions.
Fuck no. There will not be. Why would there ever be any conditions? It's only just like, oh, please don't do it. But also, like, we will do everything we can. We will do everything we can to facilitate the baby murder. The baby murder must continue. You have to. Okay? You have to keep doing the baby murder. I'll fucking die if you don't kill more Palestinian children. I need it. I need it so bad. Oh, fuck. I need it so bad. Oh, no. And I have proof. I am going to read out, and this is like a perfect TikTok, Prem Tucker's, reporter for The Intercept's, bullet points on what the United States has done. Okay? This is a good TikTok as well. Since the International Court of Justice ruled 5 days ago that Israel is plausibly committing genocide, with a mostly 15-1 decision, by the way, to continue the court case, Israeli forces have reportedly killed 818 Palestinians and have injured 1,462 Palestinians. Also, since the trial that took place 6 days ago at this point, the Israeli forces reportedly killed, like I said, 818 Palestinians, injured 1,462. A 6-year-old girl watched as Israeli forces shot and killed her family inside the car she was in. She reportedly survived, but her location is now unknown. There was footage showing Israeli soldiers echoing Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's rhetoric. We killed thousands of Amaleks. Morally, every Arab is a suspicious entity. This, by the way, is new videos, which is important to note because that is exactly what they showed in the International Court of Justice's court case. That's what South Africa showed. That all the way from Benjamin Netanyahu's mouth to the ears of the regular IDF soldiers on the ground, they kept repeating the Amalek genocidal rhetoric. And they still are. There were footage of 30 handcuffed, blindfolded, and executed bodies found in a school in northern Gaza. These bodies were under a pile of trash. Very little coverage came of this story. Okay? There was footage showing an Israeli soldier forcing a busload of kidnapped Palestinians to praise his family and say they will be his family's slaves. There's a new BBC story where UNICEF says its biggest concern for an estimated 19,000 children who are orphaned or have ended up alone with no adult to look after them. CNN wrote a story yesterday or 2 days ago. Palestinians are eating grass and drinking polluted water as famine looms across Gaza. A new Guardian story showed between 50 to 62% of all buildings in Gaza have likely been damaged or destroyed. Palestinians have been seen detained, blindfolded, and left barefoot by Israeli forces in southern Gaza, where it's supposed to be safe for the Palestinians in the safe zones. The Israeli forces have heightened the attacks around multiple hospitals. People in Israel are repeatedly blocking aid trucks from entering Gaza, where hundreds of thousands of people, including the hostages, are at risk of starvation and malnutrition. They have also talked to Defense Minister Yoav Gallant about their interest in this. Defense Minister Yoav Gallant says that Israel will maintain military control of the Gaza Strip once the conflict is over, giving it freedom to operate similarly to the way it currently does in the West Bank. Israeli forces have infiltrated a hospital 2 days ago, where they were dressed as medical staff, which is a war crime, in order to execute 3 Palestinians in the West Bank and not in Gaza. Okay? They entered a hospital dressed as medical staff and executed 3 Palestinians, one of which was directly in the hospital bed getting treatment for his spinal injury. Okay? In the West Bank, by the way. Israeli forces hundreds of settlers also recently hosted a conference headlined by officials including National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, calling for the settlement of Gaza, celebrating this. Nancy Pelosi has suggested that groups calling for a ceasefire are Russian plants and says the FBI should investigate. But last but not least, in the immediate aftermath of the International Court of Justice ruling that actually said Israel must stop its genocidal acts immediately, maybe not calling for a ceasefire, but demanding that Israel no longer continue with its genocidal acts. What did the American government and immediately the UK government do? That's right. They suspended funding of the UNRWA. UNRWA is one of the only institutions that Palestinians can rely on. Why did they do this? That's because Israel claimed, without any evidence whatsoever, that the UNRWA 12 UNRWA workers had actually facilitated in acts of violence, that engaged in acts of violence and potentially kidnapping on October 7. U.S. Representative Brian Mast says more infrastructure in Gaza needs to be destroyed. Pro-Palestinian activists confronted U.S. Representative Brian Mast, who says there are no innocent Palestinians in Gaza, and says more of Gaza's infrastructure needs to be destroyed, and says that the UN was moronic for creating UNRWA, and says it needs to be totally abolished. This is a major point for Israel. Israel wanted to destroy UNRWA for many years. Okay, Brian Mast served in the IDF personally, but like in the background, I think he was like he was packaging med kits or whatever. But that's how much of a dick rider he is for Israel, even though he is not Jewish and nor is he Israeli, obviously, and just simply is a dick rider for any kind of apartheid regime that kills Muslims, brown people, Christians, Arabs in general. Now, one thing that I have to repeat here, as far as UNRWA goes, is that the UNRWA statements came from Israel, which we know lies all the fucking time, regularly, with great frequency. As a matter of fact, almost everything that you hear from an Israeli official about Palestinians, Hamas, whatever the fuck, whether it be like a military bases underneath this cemetery, military bases underneath this hospital, military bases underneath this school, whatever the fuck they're saying, almost always is just a falsehood that is either like a complete lie or maybe like a half-truth. However, this latest report, the intelligence report that came from Israel, that was not given to the media until today, as a matter of fact, claimed that 12 UNRWA workers in 12 UNRWA workers amongst 13,000 UNRWA workers, many of which Israel has killed, by the way, more than 50, if I'm not mistaken. Okay? Israeli intelligence claimed that 12 of them had actually joined in on the October 7 attacks. Since then, 150 UN workers, by the way, Israel killed. Okay? Since then, information has come out where they had to revise that number down. They had to revise it. Now they're claiming only 4 UNRWA staff in Gaza were involved in Hamas kidnappings. Okay? Many of the people that they claimed, okay, were either not working for UNRWA at all, at least in the original batch. 6 out of the 12 were just either deceased, not working for UNRWA any longer, or wasn't working for UNRWA, or never worked for UNRWA, or impossible to find who they were. Like, it appears that iTrek, the organization that sends grad trips on students to Israel, took down an article featuring an old interview with Carrie Keller-Lynn, author of the Wall Street Journal story promoting Israel's allegations against UNRWA. In the interview, she discusses her time serving in the Israeli Defense Forces and boasts that her friend, also interviewed in the article, literally created social media for the IDF. The article featured a photo of Keller-Lynn in IDF uniform and was being widely circulated after her UNRWA article was published. The interview is archived here. Okay? Even if all 12 of the people that Israel claims were working directly with Hamas and fought on October 7 and engaged in kidnappings, the notion that you would shut off assistance to UNRWA, an agency specifically designed and created to deal with Israel's atrocious war crimes that have been happening for 75 years, to shut off assistance to UNRWA is unimaginable. It is disgusting. And it was done with very little intelligence because it was done to be cruel. It was done to say, fuck you to the International Court of Justice. We stand with Israel, knowing full well that they are engaging in acts of ethnic cleansing. We do not care. And since then, the United States, Germany, Japan, Canada, France, Switzerland, Netherlands, UK, Italy, Australia, Austria, Finland, Romania, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Iceland, New Zealand, and Sweden have suspended funding to UNRWA. In retaliation, one of the only countries that has actually increased its funding to UNRWA has been Spain. Just to think. Just think about it a little bit. Spain has now tripled its funding to UNRWA. It's not enough. Even if this intelligence was correct, it would be unimaginable to suspend funding at a time when there is ethnic cleansing happening to the one agency that is tasked specifically with keeping the Palestinians alive. Disgusting. Disgusting freaks. Just wanted to, fire it off. I feel like I don't talk enough about Israel-Palestine, but just wanted to give you guys a brief update on where we are in this circumstance. Okay? Norway is also continuing to fund UNRWA. So, yeah. Let's move on to Ukraine.
That was pretty fast.
EU summit agrees on Ukraine aid, overcoming Hungary's objections.
Damn, this guy's good.